Greetings, friends. Welcome to another installment of Into the Necrosphere. And on today's episode of the podcast, I am talking to somebody who I have wanted on the show for a long time. Anybody who's listened to more than a couple of episodes will know that not only am I a very big fan of the man's work behind the drum kit, I am also a big fan of the bands that he's in. And they really do read like an honor roll of some of Australian metal's brightest and best. I speak, of course, of Dave Haley, drummer for Werewolves, The Amenta, Psycroptic, Ruins, and many more. I'm not even going to go into a rundown of some of the topics that we discussed on this conversation because, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, from start to finish, this was a highlight reel and really, really fun catching up with him. So that's going to be coming your way in about 5 minutes' time. Before we get to that, however, Earthwomb are a black metal trio out of Lima in Peru. They've been around since 2019. They've just put out their first EP called Becoming Imminence, and it is my demo of the week. Earthwomb with a track called Fractal Phenomenon off of the awesome EP Becoming Imminence. Go check them out. They are deserved winners, or not winners, I should say, but deserved recipients of the Into the Necrosphere Demo of the Week honors, joining such greats, or soon-to-be greats, as Quell, Trivax, Born Ultra, and many others. Yeah, like I said, they definitely deserve your love and support. So head over to their Bandcamp page, show them some Into the Necrosphere affection, and when they ask you who sent you, then you know what to say. But as ever, if you're in an unsigned band, continue sending me your best work, and if I like what I hear, I will feature it on the show. Like I said on last week's episode of the podcast, one of the goals I have for myself, now that I've reached the grand milestone of 100 episodes, is I would love more than anything to be responsible for getting a band signed. And there are so many good bands that have been sent to me over the course of the last kind of 2.5 years, and bands that I think are criminally homeless as far as labels are concerned. So I know that there are quite a few label folk that listen to the podcast. I hope they hear this. Earthwomb definitely deserve your attention, as do all of the bands featured on the Into the Necrosphere Demo of the Week segment. So drop me a line, as I said, if you're in an unsigned band, on intothenecrosphere@gmail.com, or hit me up on any of the socials where you should already be following me. And like I said, if I like what I hear, I will feature it on the show. Also remember, if you're new to the podcast, elbow drop the subscribe button on your platform of choosing, whether that be YouTube, if you want to see my handsome face, or whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever else you consume your podcasts on. Like, share, leave me a comment. Thank you, everybody, for their reviews on, particularly I've noticed on Apple Podcasts, there's quite a lot of reviews popping up now, and many of them, or all of them, have been super positive. So to the folks that took the time to write that, I massively appreciate it. And I hugely appreciate everybody for continuing to check out the podcast week after week. The tidal wave keeps rolling, and it's thanks to all of you. Stick around as well. After my conversation with Dave, I'm going to be speaking about the new Necrofier record. And if you're a fan of Necrofier, then get ready to be happy, because next week's guest is Christian Larson of Necrofier. He and I are going to be talking about the band's debut record, Prophecies of Eternal Darkness, which is out now on Season of Mist. And then after that, I will be doing my usual scientific, in-depth, critical analysis of the latest metal news headlines, which broadly translates to, I'm going to be talking about some new singles or preview tracks off of forthcoming records, and then I'm going to make a switch over to the Democrats Guide to Rock Music, also known as Blabbermouth, and I'm going to talk all sorts of shit. On that note, I would like to welcome, for the first time ever, Mr. Dave Haley. So my first experience of you, I should say, was way back. I think this was like 2003, when the Amenta put out Arcasis. And I remember talking to Eric, and I said, and at the time I'd only ever had the promo, so I didn't know, I think on the promo I didn't have, who was in the band. It was just like the album cover and that was it. And I asked Eric about the drummer, and I was like, I think I asked him outright, do you guys use a drum machine? And he was like, no. Our drummer is, he might sound like a machine, but I think the exact quote was, but he's very human. And I mean, at the time, I was so blown away by how good the drums were on that record. And then, to finally be speaking to you nearly 2 decades later is a bit of a trip. There's also an awful lot that's happened during that time.
Yeah, awful lot has happened. And thank you very much for having me on. It's going to be fun.
Awesome, man. But so let's talk about the Amenta first and foremost, because that has been. I was amazed by how massive the response to that record was. I've always been a fan. I was a fan through the Divisive record Non, which I know the Amenta posted about yesterday. I've liked everything the band has done, and Revelator to me was just another chapter in throwing something out that's different, that's off the beaten path for the band, but that continues to be challenging and continues to kind of operate properly in that Amenta milieu. But I remember hearing Sear Money and wondering, oh, man, I wonder how people are going to take this record. I wasn't sure if people were going to dig it, and they seem to have just absolutely loved it.
I think I was of the same opinion when I first got the material. I think, well, firstly, I was surprised. I thought the band was honestly done. And then Eric contacted me with a whole new album, said, do you want to play drums? And I'm like, yeah. Like, of course, you don't have to ask. And then hearing the material, it's like, wow, this is pretty different. The guys definitely had a vision where they wanted to go. And usually I like to do projects where I get free reign on the drums, like creativity. If I don't have 100% control, I'm not really interested. But they were pretty clear where they wanted to go with the album, and especially the drum parts, which was a little bit different for me. You know, usually I'm like, nah, well, let me do my thing, or, you know, maybe find someone else, or, you know, program it and get someone to copy it. But I got over that, I guess, initial barrier of like, you know, let me do my thing, and work pretty closely with Eric, especially Eric and Tim, getting the parts pretty much exactly how they envisaged. Like we got to the point where we were demoing riff by riff. You know, I'd videotape a riff. What about this drum part? And they'd say, no, get rid of that. Okay, put this part in. So it's very different to work that way, backwards and forwards, you know. So by the time we got to the studio, my parts were already, like, it was a very quick studio process because my parts were already written. And lately it's, I guess I'm used to a little bit more improvising in the studio, changing things on the fly, but it was very, you know, they definitely had a clear vision of where they wanted to go with it. So it was a different way to work. And I mean, the results were killer in the end. You know? I didn't know what to expect, but okay.
It's interesting too with the drums though, because I was, as you were mentioning this, I was thinking to myself, it still sounds like your drum style. And I want to talk about that a little bit in a second too, because there's something that I've learned to, as I'm getting older, I'm becoming more sensitive to shitty drumming, and especially uninventive drumming, like, you know, a drummer that blasts, but it's literally just like the bare bones of a blast from start to finish. And, you know, maybe they'll put a little roll at the end, but, you know, when it comes to something like the Amenta, you know, you're all over the place, and but it all works, and it's brilliant because of that. Same with Ruins, same with Psycroptic. But like definitely on Revelator, it still absolutely sounds like your drumming. My thoughts were, while you were talking about this, do you think that, because I was surprised when you said how prescriptive Eric and Tim were, do you think that it's because they know you so well and they've worked with you for a long time, so they have an idea of what Dave can do? So it's almost like they're playing a video game, like, all right, we need Dave to do this. He doesn't quite want to, so we just need to keep pressing the button combinations until he gets to what we're hearing in our mind. Yeah.
I think there was a bit of that, and I think because we know each other so well, there is a barrier that's removed. So if I send something, they're like, no, that's dog shit. Don't do that. That's terrible. What do you think? If I didn't know them so well, maybe they would have let things that they didn't like fly. So I think the relationship was definitely, it helped for honest critique. It's like, no, we're just not feeling it at all. That's just, no, you're doing too much. You know, and I'd be stoked with the part. I'd work on it for hours. Be like, this is sick. And then they'd say, nah, like that bit terrible. Get rid of that. It's like, oh, okay. But it was cool to work like that because it's different, you know. Usually I'm piloting ships, like, nah, this is what we're doing. Like, if you don't like it, fuck off.
Yeah, I'm gonna start playing, and you guys just follow. So,
yeah. But it was it was a cool process. You know, for a start, I was surprised that there was going to be another album, because
the
last show we did, Eric was adamant that's it, we're done. So yeah, it was pleasantly surprising, and it was a cool process to work through.
Yeah. So I think Tim and I touched on this actually about the band, possibly being done. It also, I just from memory, it was like, is the band in stasis? Is the band over? Were you surprised when they contacted you and they said that we're working on new music, we want to put something else out?
Oh, sure, yeah. My first and foremost, they're very close friends. So I've kept in touch with the guys over the years. Eric was in the UK for many years, so we talk all the time. And not much was said about the band. So when it was, it's like, okay, here's the Dropbox of the full material. Mm. Are you interested in when you can record it? So I was like, yeah, of course. It's different. It's not what I expected, but it's different in a cool way. So yeah, sure, let's do it.
Yeah. Again, different in a cool way. Immediately for me, what comes to mind is that drum line that you play on the main riff to Seer Money, which is different for you. But I loved it when I first heard it. I was like, this sounds so different, but it sounds so cool. It's almost like a it's like, yeah. I was about to call it a boogie beat, but it's like, it's got like a real groove to it. But I absolutely fucking love it. Was that something, to what degree were you able to at least add kind of your own touch to things?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to contradict everything I said by saying, they gave me freedom within the parameters. So
yeah,
you've got these rules, and it's like, okay, well, here's the rules. What can I do within these rules? So there's lots of experimenting. It's like, how about this bit? How about this bit? And it was probably one of the most prepared I've actually been in the studio, because we'd fine-tuned every single riff and every single drum beat down to, okay, that snare's not right. It needs to be over here. Less kick drums here, more kick drums there. And I guess interpreting those parameters. Okay, well, maybe they mean this, do a more stripped back rock groove. And within that, it's like, okay, well, what would be a cool stripped back rock groove that fits with the band and fits with the music, and it doesn't sound like it's just been slapped over the top. So there was freedom within the rules. So I'd bring things to the table, and sometimes be like, yeah, oh, that's great. We didn't think of that. We like that better than our idea. Or, no, it really needs to be this kind of idea. So, there was a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
But the parameters were there for sure.
And the parameters, from what Matt has told me about Werewolves, the parameters definitely aren't there. He writes riffs and sends it to you, and a day later, an album is done. So,
let's go. The one rule is it has to be so ridiculous that we laugh at it.
Yeah.
That's it.
See, it's crazy when I hear that, right? Because this second record is, the first one already sounded like a very focused album. There's bands, and this is as a huge compliment to you guys. There's bands that will spend years coming up with something that sounds close to as good as that. The second record is a step up. I've had a whiff of the third, and I know it's even better. So it's like I'm blown away by how quickly it's happening. But at the same time, like, I understand a lot of the magic in it is kind of comes from that spontaneity. That's why it sounds so cool and so loose and so fucking angry. It's like, I think Sam and I spoke about this as well. Like, the things that we loved about, particularly old school death metal, like the first Deicide album, which I'll reference over and over again on the podcast. There's something about that album that's all of the flaws, all of everything make the record, because it sounds like just one spontaneous burst of fucking hatred. and for me, like, it's not the same style, but there's like a spiritual connection between Werewolves and between that element of death metal in the old school that I loved so much. And I get where it's coming from, because I know Matt's a fan. I know Sam's a fan too. I would assume you are also.
100%. I'm more of the Once Upon the Cross era than
the first album.
Once I'm on the Christ Legion. But we're just trying to embody that death metal. That's what it is. And the spontaneity, I think, comes from, as soon as I hear a riff, I know exactly the drum beat that needs to be over the top. The first thing that pops into my mind, that's going there, goes into that. So it's not rocket science, but that's the secret. It's not rocket science. It's got to be brutal. And it's got to be locked in with the riffs. It can't, I guess I try to play and write the drum parts in conjunction with the riffs. Like if a riff is rhythmic to begin with, why fight against it? Like it's already there. The job's already done. Or if the riff is not rhythmic at all, I've got to bring the groove in. So I just got to do my job. I'm the glorified metronome, essentially. Like it's got a groove, but it's got to not sound like a drum exercise put over the top of a flashy riff. I mean,
Which for me is the flaw in a lot of modern death metal. A lot of it sounds programmed, and a lot of it is too polished, and a lot of it lacks that spontaneity that I like. I don't care how good someone can play. I mean, if someone plays like I won't draw you into I don't want the headlines to read Dave Haley lays into Rings of Saturn, calls out Rings of Saturn. I'll call them out. They fucking suck. But like all of those types of bands for me, those technical, like these overly technical death metal bands, like from the modern era, it's fucking, I can't stand it. It doesn't sound, I don't give a shit how detuned your guitar is, how many tracks you've used in the studio, how heavy it sounds in theory. In reality, it sounds like a bunch of weak crap. And I would take Altars of Madness, and I would take Once Upon a Cross, and I would take, trying to think, First Massacre Record, Cause of Death, any day of the week and twice on Sunday over all of that stuff.
Well, there's something to be said about the flaws that you mentioned, bring out the heaviness, like the imperfections, the unhinged nature. It sounds like it's going to fall apart at any second. That for me is a heavy record, like when it sounds like it can just be, type it into a computer, press enter, and it spits out an album. The first few listens, it's like, oh, this is cool, this is flashy, but it doesn't stick with me. I'd rather listen to the old school Deicide, Morbid Angel, Suffocation. That for me is the truly heavy death metal.
No, I agree. My mom's a music teacher, or was a music teacher before she retired. She taught piano, and there was one thing. I mean, she's the antithesis to me when it comes to music, but there was one thing that she said to me when I was about 13 years old, and it has had the most lasting impact on me. And I realize as I get older that I think it really informed my taste in music. And it was basically a girl that she'd been teaching, and the girl was about to do grade 8 on the piano. And I asked my mom, that's grade 8 is really high, and do you think she's going to make it? She must be an incredible piano player. My mom said to me, no, she's not, and she's not going to pass grade 8 either. Said, I've tried as much as I can, but it's not going to happen. And I said, and asked her, why is that? Surely she's gone up to grade 7. She says, because she can mechanically play whatever I tell her to play, but there is no feel to what she does. Everything lacks. And she could, I think like most people it'll be hard for most of us to put into words exactly what that is when we hear it. But it's that human feel and that emotion coming out of you and being extended through your instrument that in this instance that woman lacked. And again, when I beat on a lot of modern death metal, that's exactly what the issue is for me. It's like anger is not a perfect emotion. If you have a fucking tantrum, there's nothing perfect about it. But if you when you extend that anger into music, you almost need that imperfection for it to be for it to work so well. There's very few bands who can get off with delivering true venom with precision. Dying Fetus is maybe like one of the few bands that can do that. And Werewolves does it with precision, but the feel isn't lost. The feel is like it's the thing that hits you first and foremost from the second that you hear "I Don't Like You." You know, when you hear Sam counting down, it's like there's just something that grabs you. It's like these guys aren't fucking about. You know, there's real intent behind what's going on here.
I guess we definitely wear our influences on our cut-off sleeves or long sleeves with prints, whatever you want.
On the battle jackets.
You know, we just want to be the bastard child of Once Upon the Cross and Panzer Division Martyr.
Yeah.
Put those together and let's go. I mean, Matt is a death metal riff machine, and for me to be able to play over his songs, it's a joy and it's an honor, because it's like I don't have to think. It's already there. It's almost like it is pre-programmed, but it's just like, I know these songs, but I've never heard them before. And you know, it's not, Werewolves definitely isn't reinventing the wheel, but we don't care either.
But that is true, but it does sound to me very unique. You know, it's a weird thing. It's like I again, because I know Matt, I know what he likes, and I know it will come out, and he's riffing. He does have a very unique riff style. Like you can hear it on Antichrist Imperium, you can hear on whatever he contributed to Akrakoka. But it's just weird. It's like the three of you guys somehow take this, you know, this sound that is as you just said, is very, very much like a love letter to some of the stuff that you grew up with that you love the most, and it just somehow just works in this unique entity all on its own. And again, I think part of what separates is that feel that I was talking about now. There's like a real passion that comes out. But I mean, maybe that's the right word, passion.
That's it's awesome to know from a death metal fan that you can hear what we're trying to do. Again, you know, we're not reinventing the wheel, but we want to break the wheel in half and throw it away. And
well, it's kind of like, you know what it reminds me of in some ways, Valenfire. Okay. I don't know whether you spent much time with those three Valenfire records that Greg McIntosh put out.
Not too much. In passing, I kill a band.
Awesome band.
Yeah. A band I'll definitely have to revisit and do a bit of homework.
I could not recommend that highly enough. It's not obviously not the same style of death metal. You know, you can again, it's Greg McIntosh who's at the helm, and one, he's got incredible vocals, which I didn't realize until Valenfire. But secondly, you know, there are definite hints to Paradise Lost, to that riffing style. You know, he's got this way of like extracting, you know, a song's worth of emotion out of a single note by just letting it linger. But the you know, my takeaway from listening to Valenfire the first time was kind of the same as hearing Werewolves for the first time. It's like, okay, the senseis are showing the students, basically, you can take, you know, 6 months, a year to write your technical shit. I can do this in a week. And that's sort of the same thing. And again, it's not to besmirch the good name of the people that are putting out great music, because there's been some cool death metal albums this year. Grave Miasma is a band that's I think UK based, and they put out a fantastic record. There's been some death metal bands that have put out good stuff. I don't think modern death metal is as exciting personally as modern black metal, though. I think modern black metal is such fucking crazy cool stuff happening, and black metal has kind of co-opted so much of death metal into it, and what was good about death metal into it anyway. Like if you listen to Panzerfaust, for example, they're they're seen as a black metal band, but I mean, you know, they've got the heaviness of a death metal band for sure. But they just blend so many cool things into this one singular fucking assault that is just magic. Ruins is kind of like that as well, actually. I checked out that last Ruins record, Undercurrent. Like I really drilled it for the last couple of weeks, you know, knowing I was going to have you on the podcast, and that is fucking magnificent, mate. I don't know why that album didn't get more attention when it came out.
I think because we're very lazy. That would be as a collective. Ruins is a band that I think it's hard to separate myself from it, and I don't want to sound like I'm patting myself on the back. It's a killer band. I love the music. I love playing. I love jamming with the guys. But based in Tasmania, the rest of the guys are in Tasmania. They've got a little bit of Tasmanian lethargy, which is slower paced than a lot of other places in the world. So they're in no hurry to get anything done ever.
Yeah.
There's another Ruins album that's all but recorded. I have no idea whether it'll get finished or not. I hope it does. But I think it's one of those bands where the friendship kind of is more important than the music. So I would prefer hanging out. And when we do write music, it's actually it's a few and far between, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like it's, yeah, I'm at a loss how to
excuse the fact that you guys didn't work harder to promote it.
Pretty much.
So I've never been to Australia yet, and my best mate is moving there next year, so I will most likely try and go, as soon as the police put down their clubs and allow people to start roaming the streets again freely. But so Tasmania, the way you're describing it sounds a lot like Durban. In South Africa, there's a place called Durban, and it sort of has this reputation for people that basically just like to fuck around, smoke weed, go surfing. It's kind of that's the vibe in Durban.
It's Tassie it's a beautiful place, very relaxed place. I kind of wish I was living there at the moment, after the madness that's happened in Melbourne over the last year. It's kind of like almost untouched by COVID. I was fortunate enough to go down there for 3 weeks. We actually managed to do some Psycroptic shows in August. Quarantined for 2 weeks, just to do the shows, and it was the promised land. No mask anywhere, no restaurants full, minimal restrictions. My parents actually referred to COVID in the past tense. It's like it's still happening.
And you immediately took to Twitter to say, as of today, I no longer recognize them as my parents.
And it actually felt like I was going back to prison when I had to come back to Melbourne. It was, it's a beautiful place. So we're Psycroptic Ruins, based in Hobart, which is the capital city. Smallish city, about 250, 300,000.
Yeah.
Visually, it actually looks a lot like Bergen, Norway.
Less snow, I would assume.
Less snow for sure. But equally hilly. It's beautiful place. Google it, have a look. Look at it.
Dude, everything this is totally random, but everything I've seen about Australia looks amazing. I'll tell you where I really got jealous of my friend moving to Australia was I'm very into Australian MasterChef, when they still had the previous hosts, and they go out to wine farms and these fucking amazing restaurants and stuff like that, and it reminds me an awful lot of South Africa, but almost in some ways. And again, I've not been there yet. There's some stuff that I've seen where it looks like it's on a grander scale. And I did think to myself when my buddy was moving over there, I said to my girlfriend, like, man, I'm for the first time in a while, I'm really jealous of him doing this.
Actually, whereabouts is your friend moving?
He's not 100% sure where he's going to end up yet. I think there's some place. So he's like a fucking, like Dave Chappelle is to comedy. He is to finances and investment. He's the same age as me. So 41. He's done with work. He's retired. So he's
anywhere.
But basically, yeah. So I can't remember the place's name, but it's a pretty, it seems to be quite an exclusive spot outside of Sydney. I think they're going to go live there initially, and then I think later on he said he might consider moving to Perth. He's a bit like me in the sense that he prefers living in the countryside. He doesn't really like the city. And I'm exactly the same. I now that I'm living at the countryside, no fucking way will I move to a city again.
Yeah, the plague has definitely put the city living in perspective. I kind of long for the country. Yeah, I actually grew up in the country in Tasmania. So
oh really?
Yeah. Tiny country town, about 500 people. Growing up as a kid, you don't really appreciate how good it
you
is
don't
at all. It's just it's the daily life. And I went back and visited it 2 years ago, and everywhere you look, it looks like a postcard. It's like, this is madness. Like, this is insane. Just didn't appreciate it. Didn't realize how lucky I was growing up in a place like that.
Yeah. Well, there's a place we used to go on holiday to, like, every single year of my life. My parents live there now. I'm going to be going there again in December, and it's my favorite place on the planet. When I was young, I fucking hated it. There was like a period of time where I didn't even go on holiday with them because it was like, oh, it's boring. I don't want to be there. It's just quiet. And then now I think back, like, how on earth did you ever think that way? It's the best, most peaceful place on the face of the earth. It's got beautiful beaches. There's not a single fucking fast food restaurant on any of the beaches, which is even better. No bars, no nothing. It's just unspoiled nature. If you've got a car, you can jump in the car and go to a wine farm. You can go on safari if you drive 4 hours. Either way, it's just incredible. But you're absolutely right. You don't know two things that I know as I grow older. You don't know what you've got until it's gone, and you're going to look back at stuff that you thought when you were young and go, someone needed to fucking slap me upside the head and tell me to wake up.
100%. Yeah. And I guess that the last 18 months has showed us all of that. It's like, fuck, you take a few things away. Had it pretty good. Had it pretty good. Didn't really appreciate it.
Yeah. Fuck yes, man. The video footage that I've seen floating about on Twitter and things like that, is there? Obviously, you've got cops in Melbourne clubbing people and fucking up the populace when they go out for a smoke. How severe is it, or how authoritarian is it really?
Well, it depends who you talk to, really, and how they want to frame it. Is anything as good or as bad as it's made out to be? Ever. I will say I was surprised at how quickly things escalated in terms of, I was telling a mate, I never thought 12 months ago, 18 months ago, I would need a permit to leave the house, an actual permit to leave the house. Just wild stuff that you'd never think. Definitely an overreach in a lot of areas. And again, that's a rabbit hole. It's like everyone's got their own theory. Everyone's got their own perspective on what's happened, what is still happening, what's taking place. I guess for me, the thing that I'm most worried about is the bureaucracy that's been put in place.
Yeah.
That's the scary thing. That's what scared me. Just having to deal with various governmental bodies that probably shouldn't exist, just to do anything, the process of getting to Tasmania to do the shows was more intensive than any visa process I've ever been through. And it's an hour flight away and we're in the same country. So things like that. It's very surprised. I'm very surprised at how quickly it escalated. Today is, I guess, what the media is dubbing Freedom Day in a lot of respects. My mum sent me a text this morning saying, hooray, you're out of lockdown. And me being the pessimistic, miserable bastard said, well, it's just lockdown light now. So it's, let's pull me out of that rabbit hole.
Well, I was not to push you any further down the rabbit hole, but I recently listened to Michael Malice. I don't know if you know who he is, but
Michael Malice. Yeah.
So Michael Malice on Joe Rogan, he said one thing that like really made me like sit up and go, fucking hell, you really nailed it there. He was like, You can put all conspiracy theories aside, he says, but you can be guaranteed there are some very evil, very influential people busy looking at all of what's going on globally, and they looking at it from the perspective of how much will the population put up with.
Oof, yeah.
And that's fucking terrifying.
Yeah. And a lot. We seem to be able to put up with a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
But the problem is we put up with an awful lot, and then we adapt, because human beings are infinitely adaptable. We adapt, and then that becomes the new normal. That's the thing. It's like, the speech discussion right now as well. There's just been this whole furor around Dave Chappelle's comedy special. Yesterday, there's protests outside of the Netflix offices, and they want his special removed, and this, that, and the other. And like I said last week on my podcast, it's, I think it almost feels to me like there's not even a discussion anymore about freedom of speech. It's kind of, okay, how much of our freedom are we now willing to give up when it comes to speech? For me, like, there's a scene in the American version of The Office that this completely encapsulates what has gone on in 2021. The main character, Michael Scott, is sitting at his desk, and he looks up at the people working with him, and he goes, "I've been the victim of a hate crime." And then another guy says to him, "That wasn't a hate crime, Michael." And he says, "Well, I hated it." And it's like, that's exactly what's going on at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. It's where does the pushback start and where does it end?
Yeah.
I think it keeps going. It seems to be. Well, I had this discussion with a friend yesterday. I was like, well, 5 years ago, I would have been considered left of centre with my views. But
far right now, mate.
I haven't changed anything, and it's gone this way. It's like,
yeah,
what has happened? Like, it's a tug of war for, not for, I don't think it's for the betterment of society. It's just for short-term, serotonin spike from the likes or views,
Yeah. I think it's that. I also think it's people that socially have no value, and they get themselves into these situations where they're actively publicly protesting people or taking people down or canceling somebody, and in a weird way it allows them this gratification of being able to compete at that person's level. Like Dave Chappelle as an example. And again, Michael Malice and Joe Rogan spoke about this theory as well, and I think they're spot on with it. Dave Chappelle is the most successful comedian of our generation. He's, in my view, the greatest comedian of all time. No question. The second only to Bill, well, not second only to anyone. Bill Burr is the only guy that I think comes relatively close, but he's fucking brilliant. Now you've got these people, protesting him over something which, if they actually watched the special, they'd realize that there was no malice intended in anything that he said. And if anything, if we were all going to take offense to what he said, then, everyone from African Americans to white people to Jews should all be out picketing, saying, take down this monster. But it's like, they've now interjected themselves in a conversation where they're almost, rather than sort of, they're kind of speaking directly at him rather than, being just part of the audience or, part of a larger, group of people where this guy, as, through his merit of his work, elevated himself above them.
Yeah. Recreational outrage is a true thing. It's real.
Fuck yes, yeah. Outrage porn. And that's true on the left and the right. There's people that will literally the first thing they do, get on Twitter, right? Let's start looking at the videos. It's like, look at what they've done. And then, they start tweeting about it. I mean, the very fact that there's reaction videos on YouTube to bullshit like this. I mean, if you've got, why are people even watching that? Like, if do you not have an interest in watching original content? When I was young, I watched, Robotech, He-Man, original programs. I don't think when I was young I would have had any interest in watching a react video to the last episode of Robotech. It's like,
yeah, I do not understand it. I guess in some ways, people can get actual validation with their jealousy by taking someone down. If you're jealous or envious, or you just you want to be in that position. You can take someone down to get yourself up a couple of social rungs closer to that position. It's like, well, good luck when you get there, because someone else will take you down exactly the way that you try to take them down. Just a vicious circle.
But it's also interesting what you mentioned about, I think so many folks are feeling somewhat confused in the fact that, as you say, your principles haven't changed. Your principles 5 years ago, put you politically left of center. Now all of a sudden, you're like, where's the lens gone? Why am I over here with the conservatives, or because I think there's a distinction between conservative and right leaning. But why am I over here with a right leaning folk? I mean, you take somebody like Barry Weiss, who was the New York Times writer, and she very publicly resigned from them. She's recently been on CNN talking to that buffoon Brian Stelter about what she thinks is wrong in society right now, that you can't discuss the Hunter. It's not newsworthy to talk about the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, for example. And she's like talking about all these things that she says she feels like the world's has gone, or indicators to her that the world has gone mad. He looks at her like she's an alien from space. Black level gaslighting, or sorry, black belt level gaslighting. Mm-hmm. But again, she was somebody who was, who used to count herself as a progressive, like a very far left-leaning progressive. And if you were to look at it through the prism of the modern day culture, not a chance. She's in the right as well.
On paper, it ticks all the boxes. It's like, well, okay, you can take the left-right madness. I'm going to be over here, just sort it out, and I'll take elements from either side to create my own worldview and get by. And I will stay off social media, because that's
a poison chalice, without a doubt.
Yeah. That's just fueling the flames.
No, I agree. No, I don't. I make a point of never getting into conversation with anybody about anything other than music on social media. I'm not, and when I say music, I mean music. If someone were to, go, "Oh, did you see the recent scandal? Did you see George Corpsegrinder's 2007 interview about World of Warcraft?" I'm like, I'm not. I don't give a shit. I'm not. Again,
I think that there has to be a point where people can see through the madness, and it's like, well, this is news agencies that rely on clicks and scandals for their revenue. So of course they're going to fuel flames. They're going to actively look for stuff that just is not an issue and try to make it an issue and tell people that this is an issue. You should be thinking about this. It's like,
This is the thing, though. I think that center is enormous, and this is what I find. I think it's so unbelievably critical whether you consider yourself, left leaning, right leaning. It's so critical that you recognize what's in the center, and that sane thinking human beings start making their voices heard in helping the center stay intact. Because once that goes, then in theory we don't have anything in common anymore. And that's the thing that I think is what's truly worrying to me. Before, if you think about the friends that you've made over the years, a lot of those people would be based, especially when we were young, it's based on, hey, are you I like that Metallica shirt you're wearing. I like Metallica too. All of a sudden, you start realizing we've got a load more in common than we didn't. Or, I see you like that Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. I think it's great. And then off you go. When they start fraying at the bonds of the things that used to keep us, that used to help us meet each other and used to help us connect and used to help us then realize what else we have in common. That's the scary thing. And so I applaud the efforts of places like the Daily Wire, to kind of say, look, if Netflix don't want to have Dave Chappelle, we'll have him. If Netflix don't want to have Ricky Gervais on anymore, you can come to us and he can do a special year. They when Gina Carano got canceled by Disney, they're like, well, you can come make movies here. And they're going to start. And I think increasingly that's going to happen. So I talk about this stuff and it sounds maybe like I'm negative and things. I'm actually not. I think the pendulum is going to swing. I just hope that there's not too much damage done before the pendulum swings properly. I think ultimately what'll end up happening is people will go to where they find something they want to watch. They're not going to be very public about it, but they'll vote with their eyes, they'll vote with their wallets, they'll vote with their eardrums. And if you look at the number of kind of woke shows that have come out that have all crashed and burned spectacularly. I mean, the fucking He-Man. I don't even want to talk about that. The debacle that was the He-Man remake. But then you look at stuff like the Dave Chappelle special. You know, movies that do extremely well. That, you know, on Marvel. It's always stuff that it's always things that, you know, kind of get this get the furrowed brow from the woke and from the mainstream media, and then they can't understand why everybody likes it, so they immediately try and interpret it as, well, it's a sign of misogyny or white supremacy or whatever. It's ridiculous. It's like people just like this. This is the entertainment they like. It doesn't matter who they are or what their background is. There's this, you look at like Netflix as an example. They've been recently, there's all these memes that have been coming out where they show like critical approval on a movie 90%, audience response 10%. And it's like, and then the reverse, like audience response 100% for something, critical response 0. Yeah. And that's,
I mean, at the end of the day, like the stats and the numbers are going to be the winners. And if you got companies bankrolling stuff and they're trying to tick all the boxes and it's not paying the bills, it's like,
I agree.
Maybe not what people actually want. There's fringes, the far fringes who are very vocal. Maybe they should just shut the fuck up.
Yeah. As I said, I hope at some point folks are going to speak up more, and almost I don't even think it's about getting into a debate about these sorts of things. I think it's about just treating people that are mentally infantile like toddlers having a tantrum, and the best way to treat a toddler having a tantrum is not to run up to them and go, "What have I done wrong? I'm so sorry." It's just go, you just stay in the corner, get over it, and when you've gotten over it, you can come back here and play. It's kind of the same thing.
I think I hope it'll be increasing that these statements, the statements that are intentionally inflammatory, that have got no basis, they're just ignored, and it's not a headline. Because we're all pretty fucking tired of it.
I agree. It's dude, and if you are of a certain age and you've been into metal for a certain period of time, you have full experience of this because you were around during the PMRC nonsense and when they were blaming Child's Play 3 for child murder and all sorts of fucking dumb shit. We've been here before. We know. That's why I say I know the pendulum will swing. Eventually it goes away, but this is no different. Burning Harry Potter books because you disagree with something J.K. Rowling says, there's absolutely no difference to, when they were tossing, Wasp records and Motley Crue records onto the flames because, they were spreading Satan's gospel or whatever the case may be. So,
I mean, it's a lot of it is the media just, previously trying to sell magazine covers, but now trying to sell clicks.
Yeah.
It's
as a side note, sorry to interrupt you, the burning of stuff and the banning of stuff, it tickles the natural rebellious instinct of human beings and they get into it. That's how I got into a lot of music. Fuck yes, man. I remember the 1986 book that my parents used to use as the guide for whether Jackie's music is right or wrong. I remember seeing Don't Break the Oath's cover in there, and I was fascinated. Like, how could this be so evil that it made it had its very own chapter in the book. Like, I just want to hear it. I'm just curious to hear it. And then you hear it and it's like, I know I shouldn't like this, but fuck, it's brilliant. And then you go back to it and back to it and back to it. And I mean, that's like
all the Cannibal Corpse albums in the early 90s were, in Australia, they were censored. They came out with a white cover with the Cannibal Corpse logo. And it's like, this is so full on. You can't even look at it. I'll put that on the shelf. I've got to hide that away from mum and dad so they don't see it. Yes, of course it's going to drag people's pique their interest.
People are fascinated with the forbidden. You know, that's why that's why in Amsterdam they aren't all a bunch of junkies, because drugs are relatively easy to come by there, and it's for the most part I mean there's more relaxed laws when it comes to drugs, but in these communities where it's policed really hard, maybe not Singapore levels, but it's policed really hard, you have big problems with people that are become addicted there, because the human instinct is naturally tickled by the forbidden.
Yeah, it's taboo. So let's get into this, because it's.
I wonder how many people right now, as we're listening to this, are saying, "Man, that Burzum album, Philosophy, we give that. I just want to hear what it sounds like. Is it really as bad as they say?" Oh, actually, that Dunkelheit is a fucking great song. So.
Looks like it's a killer album. Yeah.
Dude, Burzum is best encapsulated by the following quote. So a friend of mine, Leorsifer, tattoo artist who did one of my tattoos. I remember when he was doing my tattoo, we were listening to Burzum, and he's from Israel originally. And he said to me, "Well, that Varg, he hates my ass, but he makes some good music."
There you go, tolerance and acceptance.
Exactly. But also, don't take yourself so seriously. I joke about myself all the time, and one of my theories about where the disconnect is coming in the generations at the moment. It's like when you and I grew up, a lot of the humor was built around making fun of each other. Like if you think peak our generation's humor is being something like South Park, I mean, a lot of the jokes in there are them going at each other and shitting on each other, and we all thought it was fucking hysterical. But there's kind of, when you're with your mates and there's that banter going back and forth, there's like an unwritten rule that you're not going to be an asshole and get very personal. You're certainly not going to say something that's intentionally hurtful, but you're gonna poke the bear a little bit, and you're gonna get it back from that other person too. And that's kind of the fun of it. I feel like the new generation they've been trained to believe that is, and I mean, they not only, it's not even a theory, this is a fact. They've been trained to believe that way of communicating that we're all used to, that's a form of violence. And if you do that, you're basically worse than the worst criminal, because they also believe that prisons should be abolished and the police should be off the streets. So those are the people whose lives need to be destroyed, the people who use words as a means to attack somebody.
It's scary and sad, because we're removing an element of, I guess, adversity and things to overcome. It doesn't feel very nice when you're the butt of a joke, but you learn a lot from it. At first you might feel hurt, but then you, I guess, work through that. You see the humor in it, you learn how to do it, you learn how to bond. Removing any sort of adversity in people's life is a scary thing. It's very scary.
Yeah.
I would I'm thankful that I grew up 20 years ago, and I guess wasn't exposed to for want of a better word, the absurdity of how we're treating each other. Like, we're typically towing around everything, which, you can't actually say what's on your mind. Sometimes you have to say something that's potentially hurtful. It's not going to it's going to make someone feel bad, but you need to communicate that. And if you can't, you've got a big problem. I guess in our realm, in the music realm, if we can't communicate ideas and get those ideas shot down, vehemently, and we feel bad going to rehearsal, okay, I'll present something and someone says something detrimental about it, we wouldn't get anywhere. That's the adversity, I guess the back and forth, it's almost the tug of war of wills. We're not allowing people to experience it. It's like, there's all these rules to what you can and can't say, and it's, I don't know, it's worrying, I guess, for want of a better word.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you, and I'll say this, and this is my last point on this topic is I think the fear I have is in this crazy world they're trying to cram down on us. The notion of freedom now is you are free to like what we like, listen to what we listen to, say what we agree with, vote who we would vote for, and if not, you're fair game. Our goal is to destroy your life, and that to me is not freedom. That's I've never said anything to anyone maliciously. When it comes to stuff like pronouns and things, I'm happy to call people whatever they want to be called, and I believe every single person should get a fair shake in life, but I don't believe in uplifting people to the detriment of hurting others. I also subscribe to the idea that, again, we grew up with, where, if you don't like something, don't watch it, don't listen to it.
That's it.
Don't expose yourself to things that are going to upset you. CNN upsets me. I don't watch it. So MSNBC, Rachel Maddow on MSNBC. She had Brian Stelter's face upsets me. So whenever I hear his voice, I immediately shut my eyes so I can miss it. But it's like,
we've got the ultimate power. We can just turn it off.
And this thing is, it's not even like we're living in a world with 5 channels anymore. You have so much fucking choice. The number of hours we have in a day didn't change. We still only have 24 hours in a day. Fill your 24 hours with shit that you like. You have the option now. You've got YouTube, you've got Hulu, you've got so many bands. It's fucking unreal. Must you go after everything? Must everything be remade in the image of what the elites want us to believe? I mean, the only great thing to ever come out of He-Man, I don't know if you know Carl Dunnigan.
Yeah.
Have you watched that Carl Dunnigan Rocky video where he talks about He-Man? Fuck, dude, it is one of the funniest things on the face of the earth. I want to see if I can find it and if you can hear it, because you have to see it.
I've seen all his Joe Biden series.
Yeah. Well, the other thing of his it is just pure genius is he's got this thing called the Pussies podcast.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, mate! It is so brilliant. But I have to find this. It's only like a minute or two. So I think it's Kevin Smith. There we go. Carl Dunnigan, Kevin Smith. Got it. Okay, I'm gonna put the sound on. Yeah. Hopefully you can hear it. I'll share my screen as well once I've got it up. So okay, hold on. Right, can you see it?
I can see it. Yeah.
Right.
It's magic. Well, recently Kevin has been suffering from a terrible backlash after releasing his new series, He-Man Revelations, on Netflix. Okay. Here's a picture of him crying. He's not crying because of the backlash. He's crying because he's happy. Because he really enjoyed The Flash or something. Right. It's tears of love. Right. It's beautiful. Come on. But now Kevin, he's so sad, he may never cry again. No. Yes. Kevin is baffled that fans of He-Man are so upset by his clever twist of killing off He-Man in the first episode of He-Man. Then making the remaining episodes about a lesbian who is mad at He-Man. Brilliant.
Oh, dude, you need to see. I won't put the whole thing on, but you have to see watch the whole thing. It's like I said, it's only about 3-4 minutes long, but fuck, it's so funny.
I'll check it out. Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah, the guy's a fucking. He's a renegade, mate. He's just a total. Excuse me. I've never seen anyone operating with so much disregard for fucking anything. Him and Kurt Metzger both. Kurt put up a Instagram post the other day where he said, there's this whole thing about Superman and they're taking away truth, justice, and the portion about the American way that's being removed from his slogan. So Kurt Metzger said, am I to understand that it's now Superman fights for truth, justice, and there is no Taiwan, only one China? But something I wanted to ask you, how old were you when you got into the drums, and what was kind of the attraction for you to make that your instrument of choice?
Well, originally I actually wanted to play guitar.
Because that's how you get the girls.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
And coming from a small country town, I went to a district school. So in the whole school from kindergarten to grade 10, I think there was 200 kids. So there's like 15, 16, I guess between 15 and 20 kids per class. So in grade 7, as part of the curriculum, music was compulsory. So for the first couple of months, I was like, yeah, I'm going to play guitar. Until basically the class needed a drummer. So our teacher, she got in front of us and played a straight 8 and just handed the sticks to all of us one by one. And whoever could replicate what she did by default was the drummer. And it got to me, and I'm not saying I've got any natural ability at all. I do not. But I managed to stumble my way through a straight 8, and by default, so you don't play guitar anymore. Now you play drums. So for the first couple of years, I just played drums twice a week in music class. I didn't really think too much about it. And it wasn't until about, I think 13, I got my first drum kit. Again, didn't really have any grand plans. As you know, begged my parents for a long time to get a kit, but I guess to dissuade me from getting a kit, they said, well, you have to go to drum lessons. You have to go every week and you have to practice. And as soon as the teacher says you can have a kit, you can have one. So once a week, I had to go and get drum lessons for a year until reluctantly he said, you can probably get a drum kit now. So yeah, it was about 13. I really didn't take it seriously till probably about 15 when I was in grade 10. Moved from a tiny school with 15 people in our class to the biggest school in the state, which, there's 200 kids.
17 people in the class.
17 people in the class.
Yeah.
No, there's, like 200 kids in the one class. So I started to see other drummers, and so this was the days before YouTube. So I didn't know any sort of level. All I knew was the albums that I got, the drummers on the album. I could never play like that. That's what I thought. Until seeing people my age, playing along to Metallica songs, playing along to songs that were popular at the time. That was a massive inspiration. So I can actually do this as well. So it was about 15. I really started to get serious about it. And obviously living with Joe, by default, he played guitar because I needed someone to jam with. So I'd go and buy the Metallica books and, okay, you learn the songs and we'll jam Metallica. So yeah, there was no grand plans to be a drummer at all. It took a while for me to take to the instrument. In hindsight, I wish I got into it earlier and took it a lot more serious, and did a lot more practice in those formative years, because I did have to go back and do a lot of work to clean up issues and things that I should have, rebuild the foundations a lot.
So, and as somebody who is, I've never really ever played the drums, but it's an instrument that fascinates me because every time I've been on a drum stool, I've tried, and it's like, this is a fucking disaster. Like, I don't know how people do it.
Every time I'm on the kit.
So I'm so fascinated by it as an instrument. I'm fascinated by people who do it as masterfully as you do, because I'll tell you now, you are easily in my top 5 favorite drummers, on the planet. I hinted at you being on the podcast, and I said, anyone who's listened to the podcast is going to know what I'm talking about when I say it's one of my favorite drummers ever. But so, when you were starting to get serious about it, What how long were you practicing every day? Like, how much work was actually going into mastering your craft?
I've never really been able to practice any longer than, say, 2 hours a day. When I hear musicians say, "Oh, I practice 8 hours a day," I'm like, how do you do that? I've consistently always practiced, and probably an hour to two a day at most, but fairly consistently. So yeah, never really more than the 1 to 2 hours. And if I'm being honest about it, the practice element is a lot shorter than that, because a lot of it's actually playing. To get better at the instrument, you have to distinguish playing from practice. If you're just playing, you're just getting very good at that one thing. But you have to be playing things you don't know how to do to actually get better at the instrument. So focus practice, yeah, probably half an hour to an hour of pure focus practice, and then a lot of playing on top of that. And rehearsing a lot with, especially in the early years of Psycroptic, we'd rehearse 5-6 days a week.
That's one thing you hear that on some of those old Psycroptic albums. I mean, you guys sound all the way back to the very beginning, like a seriously fucking well drilled unit. It's you can hear the practice coming out of the coming out of the songs.
Yeah, we rehearsed a lot. The local studio didn't have a Pro Tools setup. It was just analog, so everything went to tape. So you couldn't make a mistake, because you can't. It was very hard to punch in, drop in. So if you made a mistake, you just went back to the start. So we'd have to be very well rehearsed before going in and recording, which did a lot for all of us as a player. We didn't know any better. We didn't know any different. It's just like, okay, this is how it's done. This is how all our favorite albums are recorded like this. And then it's years later, you read or hear about, the pro tooling or the drop-ins, whatever.
And your dreams are dashed. It's like, I thought so much of you, Dave Lombardo, but now.
Well, he did Rain in Blood when he was 20, so and that was definitely all analog. It's, I guess, just the setting we were in, and the particular circumstances by default helped us develop and advance as musicians.
Yeah, and when you say there were things that you needed to go back and correct, what like give me an example.
Well, I still take lessons to this day. I just came back from a drum lesson this afternoon, just improving on reading and things like that. So one decision I made probably 8 or 10 years ago was being brutally honest with my knowledge and understanding of actual music and notation. I could get by, but I wasn't particularly good at it. So just being honest with certain things that you need to correct. So that was definitely one thing. The actual theory of music, going back and starting again, relearning all of that sort of stuff. Getting out of bad habits that you've relied on. They get the job done, but probably technique-wise aren't particularly good for you, or are limited, have a limited use. So just breaking things down to just being brutally honest with yourself. Sometimes we're not willing. And the recording process has been very good for that. That's a ridiculously brutally honest process. Every time I dread it, but it definitely makes me a better musician by the end of it.
Because it'll show up every single flaw, right?
It's the microscope.
Yeah.
You think you're actually playing something when you're really not playing it. And I guess over the years, I've gone into the process with a bit more flexibility. And if I'm in the process of recording something and hearing that that's really not working with the music, it might feel good to play. I might think I'm playing it correctly, but then actually hearing it back, having the flexibility to change it on the fly. It's like, well, I've rehearsed this for months and that's how I thought the song went. But when I'm hearing it back, that's not how the song can go at all. So being a little bit more open to that process. So I guess you could say that's probably, to be cliche, that's probably maturing as a musician, not latching onto ideas and taking them to the grave. It's like, if it needs to change, it's got to change. Let's just move on. And listening, I guess coming back to the Amenta album, listening to others when you think you've done something that's amazing, like this is the perfect part, and you just get, no, that's dog shit, no. Not being more flexible and more open to different perspectives. That would be some of the things. So I guess my theoretical knowledge, going and improving that, getting rid of bad technique, and then being just more open as a musician.
And obviously knowing metal being the genre that it is, getting deeper into Satanism so that some of those energies can be channeled through you when you're on stage as well.
Yes, finding the Satan button, pressing the Satan button.
right before any werewolf session, right? I just need to leave the room, just need to conduct my ritual right before we begin to play. There was like again, when I was young, there were rumors like that abounding about loads of different people. Like, Brian Johnson drank cat blood prior to AC/DC going on stage. That's why his voice sounded that way. And Angus Young, there was a lot about AC/DC especially when I was about 9-10 years old, and I was starting to get into heavier music. Like Thunderstruck was my first taste of real, like, I mean, it's not brutal music, but like heavy music, heavy music, guitar orientated music. I remember hearing that song and just it was like I was touched by like a supernatural being. Just I loved the song so much I would like repeat it in my head over and over again so I don't forget anything. I think I listened to The Razor's Edge for a year non-stop, every single day, all day. I drove my mom fucking insane. But it's
I mean, that feeling where the hairs on all your hairs are standing up. You're like,
I still get it when I hear that song.
Yeah. Similar things, I guess. The classic albums for me, like the first four Metallica albums, flawless. And
I heard something that sickened me. Actually, I read something, I should say, that sickened me. Just now you mentioned Metallica. Lars the other day they were talking to him about songs, like Metallica songs he regrets or he doesn't like, and he brought up Eye of the Beholder, and I was like, what? It's like one of the fucking best Metallica songs, mate. Like, he says he doesn't feel the song works. Yeah. Well, Bleeding Me is a good post and Justice for All Metallica tune. Really good song.
I do. I honestly don't even know that song.
You had the cassette on you, and Matt took it and burned it. So just give me that before you even switch it on in my presence. But yeah, so first four Metallica albums. What else for you?
They were definitely the formative years, and then I guess I got into a lot of the Australian bands, the more extreme Australian bands. About 14, 15. Abramlin was one of my favorite bands, and definitely one of the most influential for me. Damaged, Do Not Spit. That album is revolutionary. If you haven't heard that, go back.
I'll have to check that out. I've not checked it out yet, and I am as you know, very big proponent of the Australian scene period. But no, I've never heard Damaged. I'll definitely check that out.
Do Not Spit, put out in 93, I think it was. Light years ahead. Those two bands are probably the most influential later, and getting me into the more extreme bands. I was into the Australian bands before, finding Morbid Angel and Deicide and things like that. And all the US death metal godfathers. I'd Metallica, and then the obvious path, Slayer, Pantera, and then into Abramelin, Damaged, Bloodduster, those sort of bands.
Mine's very similar. Mine's AC/DC, then I heard Metallica, then I heard Pantera, then I heard Slayer. Those were the two big ones for me, like Pantera and Slayer. I remember hearing Vulgar's Play of Power. Walk was the first song that I heard because it was on a one of those giveaway CDs they used to put on the covers of magazines, and I love the song. It's actually in my view now, it's still a cool song, but it's probably the weakest song on the record. I mean, the rest of the album is just full of one fucking genius classic song after the other. And I heard I got South of Heaven as well, so not South of Heaven, sorry, Seasons in the Abyss. And then from a death metal perspective, it was kind of it was a music or a video about satanic music. they interviewed, it's very famous, you can look it up. It's called Dancing with the Devil, and they've got Glenn he was probably about 20 years old. He was really thin still, didn't have a beard, he just freshly emblazoned the cross on his forehead. In fact, I don't even think he had that. And then they ask him, do you believe in demonic possession? He's like, of course. Like, are you possessed? Of course. Oh, dude, it was the most terrible thing ever. My parents sitting in the room watching it with me, they were shocked. And they showed them do sacrificial suicide. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible.
What is this? Yeah.
And so it was getting the first Deicide record, Covenant. And what else was kind of a big one around that time? And The Incomplete. And so those albums, and actually the Fourth Crusade as well. So those records kind of came in. That was great. And then black metal for me was, it's kind of, again, it was a couple of bands I all sort of got it at the same time, or I discovered at the same time. It was Immortal Battles in the North. I remember when I heard that album the first time, I was like, fucking hell.
I think that was Thrown by Black Storms was the first song I heard from Immortal.
Yeah.
It was on the other side of someone who taped me, not burnt, taped.
Yeah. I know all about that game.
Transylvanian Hunger on one side, and then on the other side, Battles in the North. And things change from then. It's like, this is Battles in the North, especially. It's like, I don't know what this is. I'm not sure whether I like it or not, but I need to listen to it a lot more. Life-changing for sure.
I had read in a lot of, because I would pick up Metal Maniacs magazine when I could, because that was the magazine that had the more extreme stuff. And I didn't like Metal Hammer and Kerrang and stuff like that all that much, because most of what they reviewed was dog shit to me. Like, especially when I was getting into heavier stuff, anything that was remotely less heavy than Pantera was weak, and I didn't listen to it. So anyway, so I had read about this Battles in the North record, and it was one of those things where I was very fascinated by it. I think there was an interview with Phil Anselmo, and they were asking him what his favorite album was, and he was like, Immortal Battles in the North. And I used to tape trade with a few folks, and one person gave me a cassette, and I'll never forget it. He gave me a cassette and said he wanted me to I think record Brutal Truth or something for him. But I always made a point of, anytime someone gave me a cassette, no matter who it was, I'd always listen to what was on it first before I recorded over it. And I put the tape on, and I swear to you, inside of 5 seconds, something in my mind just said, "This is Battles in the North." And I was like, within about 10 seconds thereafter, I just heard battles in the North. I was like, it just hit me like a fucking ton of bricks. And I was from the second I heard it, I was obsessed with that album, just completely obsessed with it. And I think, again, that's probably informed a lot of my black metal listening as well. Like, I don't like black metal that sounds sweet and cute. And I mean, there's like, black metal needs to have a raucous, chaotic, rebellious spirit to it. I don't like stuff that's too lo-fi.
It has to sound evil.
Yeah, exactly. I don't necessarily like things that sound too lo-fi. Like, sometimes I listen to some of the stuff that Kelly T does, for example, on her channel, and now on the Slaves to the Underground podcast, and that's a little too lo-fi for me. But then I hear stuff like the new Funeral Winds album. It's like, fucking hell, this is hard shit. And Mayhem to me still, Marduk still. I'm more of a Mortus era Marduk fan than I am with Legion. But that's the kind of black metal I like. Exactly as you say, there has to be something evil about it. I don't want to hear about vampires and someone's girlfriend that died and like all that Cradle of Filth, like theatric nonsense. That has no place in black metal, in my opinion. It might have a place in some subgenre somewhere, not black metal. So I'm not a purist or an elitist, but I feel if there's one thing I feel very strongly about, it's that.
I still do rate Principle of Evil Made Flesh.
I like. I haven't listened to it in ages, I must confess. But Cradle of Filth, I only had a very brief dalliance with. I think the problem with me and Cradle of Filth is at the same time I got Samael, Ceremony of Opposites, Battles in the North. I'm trying to think what else I got.
Probably Nemesis Divina around that time.
Nemesis Divina I got around that time. In the Nightside Eclipse, and then someone brought a friend of mine went to the States to get tattooed by Paul Booth, actually, just as we were talking about tattoos earlier, and then came back and he had with him Philosophem. And I remember putting that on, and when I heard Dunkelheit the first time, I was fucking terrified. It was like the song sounded so sinister, and it was like I felt like I felt like I was like listening into the phone call of a serial killer. Like it threw me. But I again, it was one of those songs I just couldn't get enough of. I like the rest of the album, but that song in particular, like if someone mentions if I hear the phrase black metal and people say to you, what's the first thing that comes into your mind? There's two things: Dunkelheit and the opening riff to Freezing Moon.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like Freezing Moon is the definitive black metal riff.
I think for me it would be that first riff in Thrown by Blackstorms, Immortal, because it sounds exactly like the front cover looks.
Yeah.
Maybe Buried by Time and Dust. Mayhem.
Good choice as well, yeah.
Yeah. I think obviously the blast beat songs. I've always been drawn to the blasts.
That's another one of my favorite drummers ever, by the way, Hellhammer. Fuck, he's good. Yeah. Oh my God. And the thing is, the drummers I like are the drummers where I can hear who it is because drumming, I think it's a little bit trickier, with a vocalist, who it is. With for the most part anyway. With a guitarist, you can kind of hear, like, when it's Dimebag playing guitar, when it's Matt Pike playing guitar. With the drummer, it's a little bit harder, and I think it's only the true masters where when that song goes on, even if they're guesting on an album, it's them. I would put in that. Hellhammer, without a doubt. Not metal, but he is metal-ish, but Johnny Kelly from Typo Negative, I think he's a fucking incredible drummer. Steve from Deicide, phenomenal drummer. Like, he's got that chasing I spoke to Chris from Deicide about it a little while back, and I described it as chasing the groove. Like, on Christ Denied, for example, it's like it's almost like the drumming is like pushing the riff forward. It's like Steve is the king of that. I really like Donald Tardy as well. Those are the kind of, Donald Tardy has got that vibe when he drums as well. Like, every song is just like, it sounds like you want to fuck someone up when you listen to Obituary, basically.
All very unique players,
yeah.
Steve, Donald, Hellhammer, super unique. And I know what you mean. Like, it's like 10 seconds in, it's like, I know who this is.
Yeah. You're up there on the Mount Rushmore, mate, with those men.
That means a lot. I probably don't agree with you, but that means a lot. Thank you very much.
Just on the topic of Mayhem as well, they're also one of the few bands that still get the importance of theatrics, build up, kind of creating anticipation when they play live. Like, I saw them at the Incineration Festival 2 years ago, and they played the Wolf's Lair Abyss intro right before they came on stage, and it's just these. I can send you a clip that's still on my phone. It's just these two blue lights on stage and like nothing else, and it's just this like that weird like electronic sound they have on Wolf's Lair Abyss, and then the like Civil War trumpets, and then all of a sudden they came on, and you've got Attila and all of his garb, and so that's so fucking cool to me. That's what I love about shows. Like, I love being there, and I like feeling that anticipation build, and then you see these shadowy figures come on stage, and the people are like, yay. And I hate when I go and watch a band and it's like I'm watching a fucking. It's like I've been invited to the rehearsal room. That would be fine, but I when I see a show, I want to see a show.
Yeah, I mean, especially with black metal, the theatrics, it's kind of part and parcel with it. It enhances the music. It's like when you go and see an insane show and the lights, as stupid as it sounds, makes the show sound better. This is an event.
Because a live show is a sensory experience. It's see, it's hear. If you're at the London Underworld, it's smell, because the toilet smells so bad. It's like, it is, but it is a sensory experience. I mean, actually smell. Funnily enough, there was a time before smoking was outlawed indoors. I will forever think of, when I think of live shows, like some of the best live shows I've been to, I've never smoked weed in my life, but I'll forever smell weed, because like when Down played or when Biohazard played, I mean, the fucking stench was so thick in the London Astoria, it would just literally envelop the whole place. So it's like stale beer, BO, weed, great lighting, great sound, great music. But I mean, that's kind of in a weird way. It's you kind of miss
it's all
it.
part and parcel. Yeah, it's all part and parcel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things I miss about no live gigs, no touring, is the little things like that. Walking into a pub and like, this, brings back memories. It's like this. This is the workplace. This is. I miss all of it. Not just the playing part. I miss every element of it.
Yeah. All right, my brother, I'm going to let you go, but such an absolute pleasure catching up with you. I mean, I'm sure people are going to love this episode, but I'd love to have you on again at some point next year. I'm sure we could talk the hind legs off a donkey. So
anytime. I mean, once we're out of lockdown here and I'm out of the abyss a little bit, then for sure.
Well, dude, man,
I'll have a different perspective.
My big thing that I want to do next year is I want to get myself set up so that I can do a couple of podcasts in person. And I kind of I'm probably being an idiot, because the vast majority of my audience is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so it's not like people tune in to watch the videos. I actually like doing the video editing and stuff, and it's easy for me when I do it, because I'll do the video and then I'll just rip the sound straight off it, and that becomes the audio version of the show. But what would be fucking cool is to do one with like you and Matt, or you, Matt, and Sam when I come and visit in Australia, because when my friend moves there, I'm for sure going to come, and I'll probably come on I wouldn't say frequent basis, but at least a biannual basis. So it would be badass to do one of with us together.
Yeah, and I guess between us all, we definitely know how to make the audio side of things happen, for sure.
For sure.
It'll probably, Werewolves has only been in the room together twice, I think.
Yeah,
at the same time. So,
would you guys ever consider playing? I mean, surely you would consider playing live at some point, because that would be music that would. I mean, I'm not saying that it's easy to recreate that, but it's music that would go down. I mean, at least in principle, it would sound fucking incredible live. And I suspect there's enough of a following for the band that you wouldn't have a problem, with financing or anything like that.
We've talked about it, and we're into it. I think we just want to get the third album out. Yeah. It sounds ridiculous. We'll do live shows after the third album.
After album 5. We'll announce that first tour.
Yeah. Definitely not opposed to it, and I think it would be cool. It's just, let's see how everything shakes out the next 12 months.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say no, never. It's like, let's hope so.
Yeah. When you guys go on stage as well, I've got an idea for the visual. I'm thinking like camo corpse paint kind of thing. So it's like hard, but also necro.
ticks all the boxes. All the
exactly. All right, dude. Take care of yourself. We'll speak again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right, man. Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye. That was a track off of the latest Amenta record, Revelator. The song is called Soriastasis. I could not have played anything else, to be quite frank. As the battle for the year's best record heats up, I have to say Amenta are still making a very, very, very strong case. That album came out all the way back in February. If you checked out the episodes that I did where I spoke about it, obviously I've had Kane on, I've had Tim from the Amenta on as well. You know that I absolutely love it. We'll have to see what happens. Like I said last week, I am very strongly considering booting my best of 2021 episode to the beginning of next year, because I feel like I'm not going to be able to give all of the bands that I should be giving a fair shake at a chance. And I do want those episodes to actually mean something. I hate these fucking fly-by-night throwaway best of episodes where everyone just kind of seems to try and outdo each other as far as getting it out first, and I know people have access to promos and shit like that, so they can hear albums a good month in advance, but I personally always find, or I have found the last couple of years, that there are records I will continue to discover in, late December, January, sometimes even February from the year before. And I'm kind of kicking myself because, they should almost certainly have had at least a mention on that best of list. But I digress. I don't want to ramble. If you wonder where my best of 2021 episode is, I'm 99% sure I'm going to do it next year. I'll keep you guys posted, of course. But let's talk about some new music now. And Necrofier have put out their debut record on Season of Mist. It's called Prophecies of Eternal Darkness. Necrofier, for the uninitiated, were spawned from the ashes of Venomous Maximus. Christian Larson, who I said is going to be my guest on next week's podcast, is the main man heading up guitars and vocals. He is joined by various fellows out of bands like Malignant Altar, Oceans of Slumber, Church of Disgust, etc. And if you're expecting music that sounds anywhere near to Venomous Maximus, then guess again, Manchamba. Because as much as Venomous Maximus kind of had its, doom vibe and, a bit of a dalliance with the occult, Necrofier are vastly different, certainly musically. It is, for the most part, a very affectionate, very sincere, and very entertaining love letter to Swedish black metal from, I'd say, the kind of mid 90s onwards. There is a very strong dissection influence here. And then, bands like Sacrilege, etc., kind of get a nod also. But all done in a very tasteful, very enjoyable way, wrapped up in a superb production. And, considering the fact that Christian, and I do speak to him about this on the episode that you guys are going to see next week, this is the first time that he's done black metal vocals or that he's kind of performed in this style. I mean, he does an absolutely phenomenal job. And then on top of that, you also have an album cover, which I absolutely love. Now, one thing about this album that I think is worth noting as well is that towards the end of the record, it seems to kind of take a pretty sharp tonal shift. It's starting with track 7, Betrayal of the Queen. The riff turns from, the speedy tremolo pick, I guess traditional heavy metal influenced black metal of the tracks that preceded it, into something that's a lot darker, a lot doomier, a fair bit slowed down. But actually for me, this to me is where the record really kind of comes into its own. I think Betrayal of the Queen is absolutely excellent. It's then bookended by a phenomenal outro tune called Plague Requiem. There are obvious nods to the general state of the world, in the grip of COVID panic. But it's kind of really a broader commentary, I think, on sort of doomsday and the apocalypse. But it sounds fucking brilliant, and it is a fantastic way to end off the record. So for me, the album kind of builds up to those two tracks as I guess as an end-to-end listen. It actually helps really lift the album towards the end. And actually, if you were to take in these songs individually, they do work very well too. I will say, when I first heard the opening track, The Black Flame Burns, I was a little unconvinced, but it was Katie from Season of Mist's insistence that I would love the record that, made me give them a chance, and she was not wrong. So, an album I would definitely, suggest you check out. I really do hope that whatever they do next, it continues on in the vein of those two tracks that I mentioned now, because that to me kind of shows, what this band is capable of when they are firing on all cylinders. And speaking of which, I will now grace you with that song. So off of Prophecies of Eternal Darkness, this is Necrofier with Betrayal of the Queen. Betrayal of the Queen by Necrofier off of Prophecies of Eternal Darkness. It's available right now on Season of Mist. Well worth your time, as I said. And if you do head over to their Bandcamp or you pick up any of their music, let them know where you heard them. And again, a reminder that next week, Christian Larson, the vocalist and guitarist for the band, will be my guest on the podcast. And that was a super fun conversation. So definitely one that you guys are going to want to check out. I am now going to click my fingers and magically transport us to Metal Storm. So, first up, what is attracting my attention on here? Weeping Silence, bass player rejoins. I had thought at one point that it was not worth continuing the podcast when I found out that originally Weeping Silence bassist had left them. No, I'm talking shit, of course. I don't know Weeping Silence. They might be cool, but the name absolutely abysmal. I don't believe that weeping or crying should have any place in metal unless you are My Dying Bride. But in which case you can be like me and actually weep when you speak to Aaron Stainthorpe. And I think I did mention it at the time when I recorded that conversation with him. But yeah, I did get super emotional when we started talking about his daughter. But anyway, I didn't get emotional about Weeping Silence's bass player returning. Nor I believe would anyone listening to this. Conan released music video for Paincantation. It says the masters of sludgy doom metal Conan are back to celebrate Halloween with a gruesome animated music video for their charging track Paincantation, proudly presenting a cinematic monster resulting from 18 months of the finest tuned animation. Did the music video take 18 months to make? Jesus. Their newest visual was created by award-winning animation director Nikos Livesey. The video manages to perfectly capture the brutal spirit of Conan's heavily distorted and downtuned sound, providing a carnage as bloody visually as it is musically in just 76 seconds. So is the song only 76 seconds long? I'll have to check this out. Conan is a band who I've had a bunch of people refer onto me, but I've yet to spend a huge amount of time listening to them. And yes, they are correct. It is so. I mean, unless I'm massively misunderstanding this this article, it took them 18 months to do something that looks like a cutscene from Diablo 2 to accompany a song that's 76 minutes long. Wowzers. I think that's all I have to say about that. Municipal Waste re-signed with Nuclear Blast, new record completed. Following a decade of wreaking havoc together, Municipal Waste and Nuclear Blast have officially re-signed a worldwide deal that will extend the Nuclear Waste Union for years to come. To date, Co-Conspirators partnership has spawned some of the best crossover thrash of the last 20 years with two stereo records, 2012's The Fatal Feast and 2017's Slime and Punishment, and an EP, 2019's The Last Rager, and we're only getting started. The band recently wrapped up work on the eagerly awaited 7th full-length album that's scheduled to be unleashed in 2022. Further details to be unveiled in the coming months. It's crazy to me to think that Municipal Waste are this old already, because and again, this is kind of where you start realizing how old you are. They still feel to me like when I hear the name Municipal Waste, I don't think of, a old band or a tenured band. But I mean, they've been around for a hot minute. And I will say this, as much as, their views on politics, which they, readily share with everybody, I think is fucking moronic. Live, they are a phenomenal band. I saw them on the Eastpak Resistance tour, playing with, who was on that lineup? I think Napalm Death was on that lineup. It was them. Power Trip was on the lineup as well. And they were fantastic. I mean, really kind of, in my opinion, almost stole the show. Top-notch stuff. Sleep first live shows since hiatus. Although not revoking the hiatus officially, active since November 2019, the California-based trio Sleep recently announced that they will be playing 3 shows in April 2022. Support act Superwolves. I do like Sleep. I much prefer High on Fire. I assume that the hiatus for Sleep was induced by the fact that High on Fire takes up too much of Matt Pike's time, as it rightfully should. because much as some folks may disagree with me on this, High on Fire is the vastly superior band. And I also know that there's a new High on Fire album on its way, so I'm looking forward to that also. Let's see what else there is. Bellacore put out a new single and music video. I am recording this on Friday, October the 29th, and I did see that Bellacore's new record is out. They're an Australian band also, so that to me immediately suggests that they are worth listening to. Looking at that photo, they look a little bit soft for my tastes, but then I fucking hardly want to speak. But I'll give that a crack and see what the fuss is all about. Wasp announced 40th anniversary world tour. I'm not going to talk too much about this because the reason I already know about this is I got a text from, I think it was O2 Priority Tickets, hawking tickets to this malarkey. And I have spoken about Wasp on the podcast before. I'm a pretty big fan of the band. And, when I was in my formative years, they played a huge influence, I think, in the music that I eventually ended up liking. You kind of go from all your friends listening to Motley Crue and Skid Row and nonsense like that. And, I liked those bands for a period of time. When I say like, they were like, it was just me discovering, heavier guitar music and kind of branching out from stuff like, Metallica and things like that, which I was already into. But Wasp was a band I really enjoyed, and particularly the Crimson Idol, but going back to Inside the Electric Circus, Headless Children, all of those records I thought were top notch. Now, that being said, a Wasp show without some of the classics, like Animal, like Sleep in the Fire, stuff like that, it's just not the same to me. And I believe that ever since Blackie Lawless has discovered Jesus, those songs no longer form a part of the Wasp set list, which to me means that I'm not sure whether I would consider giving them my money. But anyway, myself and Christian actually spoke about this at length on next week's episode of the podcast, so I'm not gonna talk about it too much. But anyway, just grabbed my eye there, and I thought I'd mention something at least. Angel Law, again, 5 nerds dressing like Victorian wimps, and also Angel Law is a terrible name for a band. Allegion announce Damnum studio album. Colorado Metal Force Allegion return with their 6th studio album, Damnum, set for release on February the 25th on 2022 via Metal Blade Records. Today, the 5-piece also deliver a blistering look into their new album with a first streaming single video entitled Into Embers. Not one I've heard. Allegion is not really a band I've spent a whole lot of time listening to be very honest. I know a lot of people really like them. And I think there was that famous clip of the vocalist and the guitarist of Allegion in the New York subway doing a death metal song, which they stole my idea way back. And you'll need to do some serious digging on YouTube to find it. But if somebody ever asks me for it, I'll send them the links. But myself and Lo, who's been on the podcast twice before, we used to do this. We came up with this web show, and this was probably 2009, 2010, called The Heavy Show with Jackson and Lo. And the basic premise of it was we were these two absolute idiots who had traveled over from South Africa, apparently because the English government had asked us to teach English men how to be real men. And but throughout the course of the show, it becomes more and more apparent that we have borderline IQs. We get into all sorts of dumb situations, and basically we recorded one episode. I actually have a load of raw footage from the second episode, which I thought was a lot funnier than the first one. But yeah, I mean, imagine Trailer Park Boys set in urban London and featuring 2 South African idiots who are largely based on pro wrestling characters, and you'll kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. But anyways, one of the ideas that we had was to start doing kind of more candid camera type stuff and incorporate that into the narrative. One of them was going to be death metal busking, and I was going to get like one of those belt clip amplifiers, a bass and a microphone, and then walk through Oxford Circus Tube Station Basically with a with the fucking drum sample just blasting, the bass going, and me just screaming and growling. But anyway, Allegiance stole that idea somehow. I don't know how, but all these metal people are into Satanism and stuff, and there's ways in which they can extract great ideas from fine, upstanding Christian men like myself. But yeah, the heavy show was ill-fated, but I actually also discovered a while back, and maybe this is something I'll share as well on the podcast at some point. I discovered the script, quote unquote, for the second episode, and I was fucking sobbing with laughter. In part by how the humor was so fucking aggressive. But also, I don't think I could ever make something like that nowadays. We had one thing that I filmed that, again, I have the footage of it on film somewhere. Basically, the idea is that I misplaced the keys to my car, but I've got this woman who's obsessed with me, and she kind of follows me around everywhere. And I say to her that because I can't find the keys to my car, she has to carry me to the restaurant I have to meet Lo at. So we filmed this footage of this girl carrying me on her back, walking around in King's Cross train station in midday when it was super busy. And the looks we got were fucking nuts, because she had this crazy like leather fetish gear on. There's me in my fucking jeans and t-shirt and my sunglasses, just laughing my head off. We got some funny looks because of that shit. Anyway, I digress. Doodsvanger, streaming upcoming album in full. This is out as I speak to you, ahead of it says here, ahead of this Friday's release of their Serpents of Old album. Black Metal Bringers Doodsvanger stream the entire music effort of 9 tracks via Black Metal Promotion YouTube channel. I've heard this and it's fucking excellent. It's another Debo Morty release, and they do not put out shit. There's been one or two things that they've put out that are, not necessarily my cup of tea, but for the most part, they are on fucking fire, that label, and that record is top notch. I will talk about it on the podcast maybe next week. But if you haven't listened to it yet, strongly suggest that you do. Let's see if there's anything else on Metal Storm that is worth paying attention to. Battle Beast, dreadful name for a band as well. And then it brings me back to Voivod, where I spoke with you guys last week about my thoughts on the Noise Cartel and the morons who run them. This week, actually, I randomly, and this was proof that Google's listening, randomly this PR masterclass pops up on my YouTube feed. And lo and behold, it is the numbskull who runs Noise Cartel who's providing a masterclass on PR. And I stopped short of commenting and saying, because he talks about how to get your band featured on a blog. And he says, well, first thing, you have to be good. And no shit, Captain Obvious. But I did almost want to comment there and say, the easiest way to get yourself featured on any podcast, blog, etc., don't sign with Noise Cartel. All right, let's move on. The Democrat's Guide to Rock Music provides us with the first gem. Watch Metallica's Kirk Hammett, Robert Trujillo jam Edgar Winter's Frankenstein. Boring. Limp Bizkit's Still Sucks album to be released this weekend. It's quite a cool name for a band. I just want to say again, by the way, because there's been a lot of follow-up stuff about Woodstock 99. A lot of people seem to really like the really seem to like the episode that I did about it. I'm kicking myself that I never put out an SOS, not an SOS really, but I never put out a message asking for anybody who'd actually been there and get them on the podcast as well. Because I had somebody who commented on the YouTube video and he was saying that he was there. It would be fucking cool to get like an eyewitness account of it, but I'm still sticking by what I said. I don't necessarily like Limp Bizkit's music, but if I were in a band and what I saw in front of me were people going absolutely ballistic, and provided, I don't think that he would have seen anything untoward going on in the audience aside from a lot of people moshing and things getting buck wild. But I think to blame them for what happened, I think is it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you know, for me, I think they just went in, played a hell of a show, thought they did, you know, one of the best shows ever. Came off stage, and you know, things went whack from there. I mean, again, the fires only started when Red Hot Chili Peppers turned up, and actually, you know, started performing a cover of Jimi Hendrix's Fire, even when they were told, hey, by the way, you need to maybe calm the crowd down. So I think the blame lies with them far more than it does Limp Bizkit. But in actual fact, the blame lies with shitty parenting and the fact that all of the people or so many of the people there were fucking scum of the earth. But again, you know, why bother to, you know, bring personal responsibility into the conversation when you can just blame music or, you know, blame whiteness, as they do on the HBO documentary, which, again, was an absolute load of shit. I spoke about AC/DC's Thunderstruck with Dave, and ironically, there's a headline here that reads, AC/DC's Thunderstruck video surpasses 1 billion views on YouTube. I think if YouTube was around when I was a lad, I think that 1 billion views, I would have contributed to at least 1 million of them. I cannot tell you how many times I've listened to that song and still love it to this day. It's a fucking awesome tune, and you know, I'll always love AC/DC, and for me, that was the game changer. When I heard that song for the first time, I'll never forget. It was about 9:30 in the morning, Sunday morning. I was on my way to church, you know, wanting to slit my wrists, shoot myself with the thoughts of the impending boredom that was coming. And there was a repeat on one of our television stations, one of our 5 television stations, of a show that used to come on every Friday called Hot Hits. And this guy, Bonnie Simon, who's a very famous DJ, and I think is still doing his thing in South Africa, he was the presenter. And again, I remember him introducing it and saying, you know, we're playing out with AC/DC's Thunderstruck. Your grandma might not like it, but you will. And just as soon as that guitar, as soon as Angus Young's kind of guitar riff kicks in, and that bass drum is done, and you know the everybody's, you know, there's the gang vocal, you know, thunder. I was just fucking 9-year-old me was transported to another planet. It was just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Changed my life completely. And you know, again, like I said, I always get goosebumps just thinking about that. Corey Taylor promises cool surprises for Slipknot's first real stadium show. Not going to bother commenting on that, but it says here the Southern Californian edition of Knotfest will feature additional performances by Bring Me the Horizon, Killswitch Engaged, Fever 333, Code Orange, Vended, and Cherry Bombs. With the exception of Code Orange, that sounds to me like a shit sandwich with a side order of ass fudge. Sepultura's Derek Green on his first impression of Brazil. It was incredible. I'm assuming that he turned up during Rio Carnival time, because to me that would also have been incredible. Yeah, anyway. It says here, Sepultura just released Sepul Nation, the studio albums 1998 to 2009, which celebrates the Derek Green era of the band. Kind of ignores the last 10 years, does it not? Across 8 slabs of vinyl or 5 CDs, it contains the albums Against, Nation, Roarback, Dante, and Alex. All of those records have some great songs on. They're not necessarily all consistent in my view, but Nation is fucking excellent. Roarback has got some phenomenal tunes on it. If you doubt what I'm saying, go back and listen to a song on Roarback called The Urge. Absolute genius. Alex has got a song on called We Lost You, which is also brilliant. And as I've said many times, I'm a big fan of Derek Green, and I personally think Derek Green is he's more my kind of cat than is Max Cavalera. You know, all due respect to Beneath the Remains, Schizophrenia, and Arise, because I love those records when they came out. I still love them. Are they better records than the records that Derek have appeared on? Yes, they are. But that's also contentious, because what do I tend to like listening to more when I'm going to listen to Sepultura, Nation or Arise? And that's debatable depending on my mood. Megadeth's Dave Mustaine says guitarists like Marty Friedman and Kiko are hard to find. It seems like the official photographer of Idiots in Metal strikes again on this one, bringing his 2002 Nokia camera phone rig with him, and taking a 0.5 megapixel up the nostril shot of old must stain. But apparently this was recorded while he was filming a new video message on Cameo, which it says here, let's users hire celebrities to record brief personalized video messages. I actually used that last year for my girlfriend. I got the Hodge twins to record a message, and they, in fairness to them, did a fucking brilliant job, and she loved it. But I know, to get them was about $50 at the time. I think the price has gone up now. But I know Diamond Dave, it's I think a cool $250 or $350 to get him to do it. But can you imagine getting a video message from him saying, hey man, I want to, wish my friend happy birthday. He loves Megadeth. And then there's 5 minutes of him gobbling on about how, or about that time when his Jitkindo master, the teachings of his Jitkindo master stopped him from committing murder upon someone, in most cases, James Hetfield. And then right at the end of the 5 minutes, P.S. Happy birthday. I will admit, just so that no one thinks I'm a hypocrite when I talk about the record when it comes out, as much as I think Dave is a fucking pleb, I will be listening to the new Megadeth record out of morbid curiosity as much as anything else. I know that disappointment is almost guaranteed, but I am curious all the same. I think that's pretty much, folks. Here's one more that I'll talk about. Corey Taylor, once again, loves Swedish pop stars or superstars, ABBA. I have to say, it feels to me like it's become a bit of a trend for certain metal folk to profess this love for maybe one of the most anodyne, unoffensive, unedgy pop outfits to ever grace music. It's just it befuddles my mind, and it feels to me like it's this. And maybe he likes them, maybe he doesn't. But it does feel to me like quite a few people have said this over the course of the last kind of year or two in metal, and it's almost like it's this trend or this way to signal that, hey, I might be in a hard metal band, but I can also be a little quirky. Ha 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 ha. Also, it says here that he spoke to the failing New York Times about his love for Swedish pop superstars ABBA, who made a surprise announcement in September that they would release their first album in 40 years. Growing up in the 70s, there was such a weird amalgam of music all over the place. I had Elvis, I had Motown, I had weird disco. Through all of that, I remember hearing ABBA's music. It seemed like it was always on, and it was clearly different from everything else. It had this full spectrum, lush production that felt and sounded big. It was only 4 people, but those songs sounded like they were 1,000 people being recorded. The match didn't add up to me. As for his favorite ABBA song, Taylor said, Take a Chance on Me was always my jam. I love the juxtaposition. The beginning sets the whole tone for the song with this weird Gregorian monk-like chant going on, and all of a sudden the crazy European production kicks in. Like I said, maybe he likes them, and he's certainly entitled to like whatever he wants. I'm pretty sure there'll be a bunch of music in my catalog that a lot of people will frown upon, but I just think that I keep getting the impression that this ABBA infatuation, because I think Nurgle has said it. I know Gall has said it, but let's be honest, Gall is Gall. I don't know. It smacks of insincerity to me. Maybe I'm just being a cynic. I'll tell you this much. My dad used to listen to a very wide variety of music. Unfortunately, about 90% of what he listened to was complete and utter crap. And when we used to, drive down to our, spot where we also used to go on holiday to, it was a 13-hour drive. So having to suffer through 13 hours of country music, ABBA, just for the fucking morbidity and the horror of it all to be broken up once in a blue moon by Bob Dylan or by something along those veins. I fucking detested ABBA because my dad loved it. And a band that he also loved that's even worse than ABBA, it's like the fucking Xerox, it's like the Chinese knockoff of ABBA. They're actually from the Netherlands, I believe, but they're called BZN. If ever you want to torture yourself, listen to 2 seconds of that horseshit, and trust me, you will never be the same again. Anyway, on that note, I'm done with the news for this week. And folks, that brings me to the end of another episode of Into the Necrosphere. If you've stuck around until the bitter end, thank you so much for doing so. Thank you also to Dave for coming on the show. And like I said, hopefully I will have him back on the podcast at some point in the not too distant future. And I'm really hoping that at some point I'll be able to go down to Australia and hook up with all of those Werewolves boys. Great guys. And I really do think if ever there was a band that epitomized the spirit of this podcast, it is Werewolves, and it is those three men. So it has been a pleasure having all three of them on the podcast, and they're definitely going to come back on again at some point. I think there's for sure a part 2 needed with Sam. And Matt is just a fucking awesome dude, and a guy I'm proud to call a friend, and great always having him on the podcast too. Remember, next week I'm back with Christian Larson of Necrofier, and then the week after I've got Dennis Mikula of Ghostbath coming on the podcast. So it's going to be a fun little sprint until the end of the year. My last episode for 2021 is going to be posted on December the 8th. Then I'm going to take a break probably until about mid-January, maybe towards the end of January, depending on how much of a shitstorm there is to wade through upon my return to work, which is going to be January the 11th. And I suspect it's going to be ample. So probably count on me being back January maybe somewhere around the 25th or so. But in the meantime, there's tons of good stuff to see out the year and finish on a high note. And speaking of finishing on a high note, I'm going to finish on a high note right now with a track off of an album called Undercurrent by one of Dave Haley's bands, Ruins. This came out in 2016 on Listenable Records. In my opinion, it is absolutely criminal how underrated this album is. So if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure that you do. As proven right now by a track called Certainty the Adversary. Phenomenal tune, phenomenal record, one I'm sure you guys are all going to enjoy. And I want to, as it starts to fire up in the background, I want to say thank you very much for the support. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.